Hello and welcome to the Moms Making Dough podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt, and today is episode 51, From Busy to Breakthrough, How to Find Your Business Bottleneck and What to Do About It Once You Do. So this episode, first of all, I can't believe we're at 51. Next week or next episode will be anniversary episode. So I'm super excited about. What I'm even more excited about is I just went to an amazing event. I went to Scaling Workshop. If you listen to my podcast, most likely you follow Alex and Layla Hermosi. They both have their own personal brands, but they are in business together. They've owned several companies, massive multi-exit out of their original company, Gym Launch. And this was the first event I have gone to, in-person business event. It was in Vegas for definitely, I think the world of just like remote and Zoom has become so accessible to everyone, which has been amazing, but there's definitely something to be said for going to an in-person event. And this event did not disappoint. In fact, I might have to go out on a limb to say it was probably one of my most impactful and influential business events I've been to, if not in the last 10 years, but at least possibly, maybe ever. I'm just going to give it that. It was absolutely epic. So I wanted to bring you into what my experience was with that because it was so, like I said, game changer. I've already seen some of the changes that we're implementing, and I went with, again, I have multiple business and we don't work together physically anymore. Like I don't go into the physical office. I'm more behind the scenes. About to change, not the physical part of the office, but how I'm operating in at least one of our businesses. So we both went to this event, and he went on our actual physical practice location, our wellness center. I went on the side of our other business, the hormone nutrition side, which is a virtual business we run called Weaponized Wellness together. And Weaponized Wellness is a newer company. We've had that just shy of 2 years versus physical practice. We've had 15 plus years this year. So 2 different tiers of revenue, 2 different business models, but we work together on them. So we both I went, like I said, the hormone optimization side, and he went the wellness practice side. So I wanted to capture for you I had so many takeaways, but one of the biggest takeaways was like focusing on the one thing that really matters. They called the big idea being the one constraint of your business, like what is keeping you stuck, because everybody that was at this workshop, and one of the coolest things about the workshop was you had the whole team of acquisitions.com. So you had these specialists in very specific areas of growing a business, because there are so many of growing a business. And usually entrepreneurs with, less than 6-figure revenue it's very commonplace to get stuck at 6-figure revenue. And there were people from just starting to 6-figure revenue. There was 7-figure revenue. There was 8-figure. There was 9. And they grouped us based on our gross revenue. Also really, really cool. And we did actually like roundtables with each department, a total of 8 departments from acquisition.com. And acquisition.com, just to give you a little bit background, if you're not familiar, is a company that does exactly what the name does. Great marketing. Hermosi 100% is an absolutely brilliant marketer. And with that's what they do, is they are an equity firm that buys and sells and preps companies for sale. And that was not our intention of going in any way, shape, or form, but our intention of going was learning how do we scale in both businesses. So that was the desire. So on today to the one biggest concept that I took away that I thought would be the most valuable for my entrepreneurial mom listeners. And one of the things they really, really shared as the foundation was you don't need to solve every problem. and you just need to solve the right problem. And how often as entrepreneurs, we are problem solvers, right? Like most of us got into the business we're in because we had either the pain that we solve at one point in our time, or we get pleasure from helping people solve some sort of problem that they have on a very consistent. So thinking about when we look at our business there, if you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I love that saying. And ironically, I started saying that a couple of weeks ago to my clients, and they actually had that in their presentation. And I was like, holy shit, this keeps coming up for me. And how it keeps showing up for me was that like when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, because when you're an entrepreneur, all you tend to see is all of the problems that you need to solve. And people tend to ask you to solve their problems. You tend to say yes to solving other people's problems because it's usually fun or a challenge for you. And so kind of starting to wrap your head around is we don't need to solve every problem or everyone else's problems at the same time. We need to start to identify what is the one constraint, what I like to refer to as the domino in your business. And I'm going to dial down what that means. And this is where we start to think more of like a CEO, and we stop functioning like a dysfunctional operator of our business in panic mode, where we're reacting to things rather than the CEO of making the decisions that lead to the best ROI for the company so that it can continue to solve whatever problem it is. And again, that's where the concept of when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's so easy to get distracted, to get caught up in all of the problems you need to solve instead of fixing the one thing that would actually move you towards a new reality. Because reality is that when you solve one problem, there's always going to be a line of ones that follow. And I'm saying new level, new devil, right? So it's always going to give you a new constraint every time you solve the one that you currently have. But the big takeaway for me was like, can I really dial it down? And the one problem I really need to solve in our business for us to be able to continue to scale, not just make a couple hundred more grand, but to instead to processes, how many people we can solve the problem for, our revenue, our growth as a company, to take it to the next tier of the next level for us. And it is so easy, especially I find for us female entrepreneurs, to get in a couple common problems. Number one is, I love to say, is that like you can be busy without, or you can have activity accomplishment, meaning you're busy, you have a lot of time constraint, but you're not really getting the right things moving the needle forward. Hence you stay stuck, you stay stagnant in your growth, in your revenue, in your team, in even your desire to grow the business. We get thrown into this multitasking myth, right? Where it's like, hey, I can pay attention to all of these things and do none of them well, but I can give attention to all of these things at the same time. And just starting to be really honest with ourselves of what's the one thing we need to be doing. And what they really harped that big idea of the one thing we need to be doing as the CEO of our business or our family is identifying what is the one biggest constraint we are currently facing and solve for that. So we're solving the right problem with the right tools at the right time. I like to say all those three things need to happen, because you can be solving a lot of problems, but they might not be the right problems that are actually going to move the needle forward or hit the nail on the head. We'll stick with that one. The other one is that you have an invisible productivity leak, meaning you have what I love to call the transition tax is taxing the shit out of you, right? This is something, it's so common I see. And one of the things that I love that they talked about was doing a time audit. And one of the first things I did actually when I came back, which I'm going to share that story, is I asked my team to document every single person on the team to document what their what their day looks like, and write down every single thing that they're doing on their shift. Because I've been so far removed out of our wellness practice for so long, the physical day to day, that there's a couple roles in there that I have helped been in the hiring process for, but I actually don't know what they do in operation from an operation standpoint day after day. And I explained to them that the reason that I want them to document is because I want to start to see what are the things that they are doing that they should not be doing at all. Like maybe they need to cease to exist. Maybe they're doing things that actually someone else on the team should be doing because it's more appropriate fit for their role. And, or maybe there's opportunity of things that we need to add to their tasks that fulfill the specific job role that they were hired for or they are moving towards. So, and one of the activities that they shared in the first couple segments of the scaling workshop was the importance as the CEO to even monitor in what they call time audit. And if you are listening this and you have definitely heard me talk about this, how this is huge before, is that this is where I start with most of my clients. It sounds so trivial. I will start with having them really document how they are currently spending time in their business. Or if you're applying it to your finances, like it's really easy to start doing a spending or log. So in the context of this episode, I'm going to talk about it just from the time, because that's what we're going to talk about, because time ultimately is a constraint. That would be the activity I'm going to have you guys do. And I want you to think about, once you know what the one constraint is, we start to dial it down. And there's two categories of constraints business will face is one of the foundations they taught. And I absolutely just loved the way that they presented this. And I loved it so much. I wanted to make sure that I broke it down and shared it with all of my listeners, because I think it can be that powerful of a shift for you as it was for me. And they broke it down to the framework of every business problem is a demand problem. So I'm going to give you some definition of how I interpreted what they said, hopes that it will help you. So the two real constraints, like I said, demand or supply. Demand constraints, I like to say in a more like black and white way, are like marketing or attraction problems. These are problems like, I don't have enough leads. I am not getting enough attention. My ideal clients are not actually coming through my funnel. Some of the signs you could see on demands are quality of leads, empty calendar, meaning you might be getting lots of leads, but none of them are converting, right? That could also be a systems problem, but we're going to get into that. But right now we're talking about front end things that are happening, that there's not a demand for your product or service experience you deliver, or there could be more of it, right? So you might have leads coming in, but like I said, this is more looking at this is like, what are some of the signs? You could have an empty or inconsistent calendar or schedule. You could have very sporadic revenue. Now, I'm not talking sporadic like, hey, I'm a seasonal business. So yeah, I make my, money in this specific season. No, I'm talking about like 1 month, it's not six figures, and you can't really put your finger on exactly why that is that. You are constantly coming up with new offers thinking it's your offer. Or maybe your messaging feels unclear. Like maybe you are getting leads, but you're attracting these like leads that are not qualified for you. Or not only are they not going to convert, but they're just, when they come in, these are not leads that are worth your time following up on. So what was really huge is I really thought at the very beginning when they shared demand, I was like, oh, you know what? We got leads. That's pretty, like, for both businesses. I knew some things that I wanted to correct, but I didn't started sharing this concept that I had a demand constraint as my number one that I needed to focus on. This breakdown yet that I just went over with you. And I originally thought supply was my issue. And then they started to define what supply was. And I like to think of supply constraint is much more of a fulfillment, or what I call a capacity problem. This is, hey, we have an overbooked calendar. Well, in my case, in one of our businesses, I thought one of our doctors is overbooked, but one of our doctors isn't. Right? We have long wait lists, right? So I was like, oh, I fit into this one, like, because on one of our doctors, we're having to book like weeks out. And then I was like, oh, this is why I think I have a supply issue. You're at team burnout or team, what I call cohesion, meaning you have a big team, or maybe you have a small team, but they're wearing lots of multiple hats, right? They're not just really clearly defined job roles. And the second or the last one is maybe your delivery of the product is messed up. Maybe your shipping times, or maybe there's your orders. Maybe you're getting refund requests a lot. This is, like I said, this is a supply. You're really down. I was like, oh, I realized that a supply issue or a supply constraint means that you can't handle more volume, right? So that is brought me to my husband and I. So this event was in Vegas. So it was great because we got to go some like special dinners together. And our daughter wasn't with us. No one we knew. Is also another bonus because that's not normal for both of us. And so it was really, really special because we were able to download. No, most people wouldn't go to a really fancy dinner in Vegas and be having a business meeting. But we were both so about what we were, that we wanted to make sure we shared it. So we did it over the beginning of dinner, and then we transitioned to just fun. So one of the things that we talked about is explain this constraint. I thought we had a supply issue. And then Ryan, who's my husband, I was like, you know what I realized? I was like, we need a demand issue. We actually have a demand issue, meaning we have leads, but we don't have enough of them, or we need higher quality. And we definitely don't have them for specific services that we need to be going on. So we needed to shift our focus to more demand constraint thinking rather than supply. And so we both, Ryan and I, started to ask each other questions. And one of the questions they led with, and then I'm going to give you two that we added that really gave us some clarity that I wanted to use on this episode to help you do the same, is asked what I call the 20 lead question. So I'm going to give you 3 questions you can ask to help in your businesses right now. The first question I asked him was, I said, if put 20 leads in your funnel, meaning him, a practitioner in our office, tomorrow, what would happen? And so we realized on that one, we had a speed issue, meaning we could not fulfill on those leads if there was 20 more for him specifically. But when it came to our other practitioner, that's not the same case. So we had to start to look at individual schedules in this context rather than our business as a whole. And the next question, which I love this one, is we asked was, you go on vacation, what breaks? This is the one they gave us there. And I was like, whoo, that's a really good one. Because I remember a point in time where we would go on vacation into our business, our first business together. And I would literally eat every fingernail I had. And because I would be so nervous of leaving our business, because at that time, at where we were at with team, with revenue, with systems, we would leave to go on vacation and things wouldn't just break, but we would just have to close because we didn't have the capacity we were a, owner operator type business. Like I said, we didn't have team, we didn't have systems, and we didn't have revenue that worked with or without us. So we owned a job, or Ryan, and I just managed the money. So I was sharing with him over dinner that, like, man, I remember how that used to feel because we would spend, let's say we went on vacation and we spent $5,000. Well, at that time in our business, every week we weren't open, it also cost us probably 10 to 15 grand. So our $5,000 vacation cost us about $20,000 in real time by having to close our business, not having, like I said, a team to cover for us, not having systems that allowed us to operate with our business there. So that was the answer, 10 years ago. Now today, I was saying that we really needed to celebrate because in the practice specifically, we have an awesome team. We have lots of systems in place. Are there things that I know would still break or would get a little bit choppy? Yes, absolutely. So we identified what those things were from the practice standpoint. And then we talked about what it was from the hormone optimization, because that's helping us figure out, hey, here's what we need to identify as our one constraint. What's our domino? And the last question that I loved was, I think I asked Ryan this one, is that like, hey, because we have a physical location, we leave what gets missed, meaning what do we not have a person in play to do? Where are we missing job descriptions of things that we don't actually realize that need to be done? Hence the exercise of coming home, having each member of our team do a time audit of how they spend their time so we can refine, review, and then possibly, if need to, reinvent job description so that it's more current with some of the things that would get missed in our business with us not there. So these were the 3 questions. 20 question, if I put 20 leads in your funnel tomorrow, what would happen in your business? The vacation question, which is what breaks when you're not there, and or the what gets missed when it comes to job roles of the current team you have there, is 3 really the questions that we asked across both businesses to each other. And that gave us so much information for us to work with together of like, hey, what's our one constraint? Which we then came back to originally, both of us thinking it's a supply issue. In the practice, one of the supply issues we thought of is that we needed to get Ryan more out of the business. And our solution at that time, before that we've been talking about for a while, is like, hey, Ryan's always going to be the head practitioner and the leader and the trainer of our team and client care, right? Patient care. That's his gift for sure. But with that said, we also were talking, what would it help us? And we wanted to expand our hours. That was the approach we went in there with. And the approach we left with, which was something that we had also talked about, was very, very different, but we got confirmation that we needed to choose one path over the other by honing in on what was our one constraint. So the best way to these questions to start to dial down, how do we solve our one constraint? Is it a demand one issue? I like to say this caveat. They did not say this. This is my own interpretation of it. But in my opinion, demand challenges, because there's some time for tweaking and testing and even tracking metrics on demand stuff, is more, I think, of a time curve to not only correct, but maybe versus a supply issue tends to be something that you could probably tweak a little bit faster and implement a little bit faster. Hey, we don't have a person to do this role. We know we need to hire specifically this role, even though hiring can take a while. There's even supply issues, in my opinion, can get solved a little quicker than the demand issues, because the demand issues, like I said, require usually some creativity and some testing and some implementation before you know if it's working. The next step after you ask those 3 questions would be to do the following. So the 3 questions being the 20 lead question, the vacation, what breaks question, and the what gets missed if I'm not here. And the reason that I wanted to just recap those is because what ended up happening when we came back from Vegas, which was, like I said, I was supposed to record this episode yesterday. And unfortunately, we had an amazing time. But when we got back, guess what got tested real freaking quick? Question number 3. Because I was out running my dog after we got back in time for a massive snowstorm and slipped on the ice, tore his ankle, and broke his leg. Yep, you heard that right. And I didn't get to record yesterday because I was at the ER and then helping him get a cast on, and then him scheduled for surgery with an orthopedic. So he is going to be out of our physical business for a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks. And I am so excited to say this, which people that just heard me share that are like feeling my pain. But both of us looked at this as a God wink, accelerate some of the things that we know we need to change probably pretty quickly and can do quicker than we thought because of this happening. And it also gave us confirmation that we have identified the one constraint, a demand constraint. And we also have such an amazing team in place already that we need to build upon. And that is what we're focusing on now. But the reason I share that is because I was able to go into the office yesterday instead of sitting here recording for you guys. And I have not been physically in the office, like and worked with the current team we have. Some of them have been with us for years and they are absolute rock stars. Every single person on our team right now is a rock star. And I went in there and I had to lead our team meeting. And I had to tell them what was going on. And I said, listen, I have not worked in our physical practice location since I had my daughter, which was 5 years ago. So I worked till almost the day September 20 in one of our practice locations, one that we no longer own. And I thought about what a freaking gift that I am able to go into that office and I know all of the systems. The only thing that I can't do is adjust people, but we have an awesome doc who can. And my team was so on point, so supportive, and I was able to step in and lead them through what needs to happen because Ryan is physically not going to be there for a while. And this is where I had already planned to give them the assignment. I was planning to go in yesterday to give them the assignment of I need you to document your job descriptions. Because the reason I was asking them to do that is because, like I said, we have a couple of job descriptions that do not exist just even 2 or 3 years ago. And so I shared with them about how time is their greatest asset in general, but also within our business. Like I said at the beginning, when I asked them to track their time, I need to start to look at things you are doing that you shouldn't be doing, not because you can't or you don't want to, just you don't need to. And then I said, and I also need you to show me the opportunities of the things that you could be doing that actually you really enjoy, that I could put on your task list that you would get excited about. And it also gives me an idea of, hey, who do we need to add to our team next? Because what is getting missed that no one has ownership of right now, and allows me to create job roles, which Ryan and I together on. So my challenge for you from this episode and from my time invested in Vegas, our money invested in Vegas at the acquisitions.com event, is to ask you to do the same thing, not only for your team. If you have a team, definitely encourage you to do a time audit, but maybe start from this takeaway is start to audit your time. Where is your CEO time going? Is it mostly in marketing? Is it in fulfillment? Is it administration stuff? Is it checking social media? Is it wasting all your freaking time when you need to be putting on your CEO hat where you are literally making every second you have in your business count so that when you are at home or with your family or at your kids' sports games or walking your dog, you are 100% present with what you are doing outside of your business while your business still grows and operates without you. And I want to just tie this in closing to also to financial management, because remember at the beginning, or the myth of multitasking. These are things that are invisible expenses. They don't have a hard expense attributed to them. However, they are costing you. So starting with doing a time audit, because that is the first step, is how am I managing my time? Because when you start to look at your time as the CEO, you will also be able to identify that one constraint a hell of a lot quicker. Meaning, do I have a demand issue or do I have a supply issue? And I'm just want to close out with a little bit. I know this is going to be a long episode, but I'm going to roll with it. Real world examples, because I thought about this week as I worked with, some one-on-one clients, just with Ryan. And number one was, I thought about there's so many people that are coaches for everything you can imagine. And I remember one of the things that I thought about is that I worked with that was a sleep training coach when I had my daughter, because sleep was my number one priority for not only me, but to teach my daughter. I wanted to teach her how to be a good sleeper. That was really something that was important to me. So I hired a sleep coach. And I remember too, is that she was amazing, but she had a new program every freaking few weeks. And I thought about it. I was like, I wanted to keep buying from her, but she switched her shit so much. I was confused. And I think it's very common in coaching to want to switch your program or your offer. And I know some very, very successful coaches and consultants who only have one offer, and they have had and revised the same offer for 5, even one of them I can think of, a decade has had the same offer. Now, they've presented that offer differently and tested and tweaked it, but the same offer. And the reason that I say that is that the real issue here is usually unclear messaging. And every time you change your offer, you're going to get a little bit distracted. And this is a demand constraint, meaning the message isn't really clear to attract that ideal client avatar when you're a coach. So don't confuse your buyer with too many options. The wellness practitioner, man, I have seen so many of these. They say they're overwhelmed or their schedule is so packed. But again, here's what the category we fall in. One person's schedule's so packed, but one person isn't. We need to figure out and solve that constraint. That's a demand issue. So the problem is our schedule had gaps. We need to get to the bottom of it. But how do we get to the bottom of that? We add demand first so that we fill that schedule, and then we add to the schedule. We don't just guess by adding more stuff when our schedule isn't already full. Okay. And then the third one is going to be high earner mom. Again, common scenario. The mom who tracks every expense and is still maybe in the scarcity type mindset of like, hey, I need to spend less money. Man, I get there at times. And the real issue is that they have inconsistent income, meaning they don't know what their income is going to be. So they think that if they just control expenses, that they will be okay. Well, reality is that if they spent as much time obsessing over how they could make more money, they would actually then not need to really worry so much about the expenses, because we know that as revenue grows, we have to dial down to what are the right expenses that should be growing, right? Things like payroll, because you're hiring and you're scaling, right? You're adding value, A+ team players. So just really starting to think about like, what is the issue that I'm facing because of it? And then what does it boil down to in terms of a demand issue or a supply issue that I need to solve for? And identify that one thing, that one constraint, what they call the one constraint, that one problem you need to be solving, not the hundreds that you need to be solving as an entrepreneur. And finally, closing, remembering that you don't need to stop paying the transition tax by looking at the time audit of like, hey, where am I losing time? And time that you can't get back or you don't get paid for. And then also constraint thinking versus CEO thinking. It is not a versus, it's a equals. Constraint, identifying that one constraint equals CEO level thinking. And if you want to scale your business, which almost every single person that listens to my show, I know that's they have, do so. And I get some stuff coming down the pike where I'm going to start making that a little bit more accessible for people, because this has become such a huge passion of mine, of just helping you get not only to that one constraint, but helping you figure out the tools you need to do, but most importantly, the mindset you need to be adopting for you to move to the next level. I love that saying, is like a mind once expanded can never retract to its original size. And that's my hope of me using this platform, Moms Making Dough, to teach and reach people who want to do the same. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed talking about it. And if you do find this information helpful, and I would really, really appreciate if you would share it. And most of all, too, if you are feeling super generous, not only share with someone else you know, but if you could share a review show, that would be amazing too. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.